Professor Xiao. He was my first PhD student here. And he introduced me to a number of eminent Chinese colleagues and professors of botany and ecology in the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and especially at the Institute of Botany. He kind of guided me through my first venture into China in 1990, 91, I think it was. That it was just really sick, of course, for a lot of the research that I did, but many others here at Colorado State University as well. So again, it's really a pleasure to introduce Xiangming. We met in 1990, and he was doing his PhD, where he was really instrumental in building this collaboration between Chinese researchers, especially the Chinese Academy of Sciences, the Institute of Botany, and reconnected these researchers with researchers here in the Range Department at that time, and with other members of the university. From there, in 1994, he took a really prestigious postdoctoral position at the Ecosystem Center at the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole. He joined a group there that really developed a cutting-edge integrated Earth system modeling system with a group at MIT and at Woods Hole. He then took up a senior research position at the University of New Hampshire with the complex systems there, led by Barry and Moore and others, and really perfected or increased his applications of looking at land use change using remote sensing of information and ecosystem modeling to look at changes across the world, especially in grassland systems. But while he was there, he also developed a unique project to look at how does one apply remote sensing to track migratory bird populations. And this was at a time, at an early event, where an avian flu outbreak was taking place. So he, with a large NASA grant, with a team of researchers from around the US and with the USGS partners as well, got this project started. And that set of studies continues today with looking at bird populations in Asia wetlands. In 2008, Xiangming took his current position as professor at University of Oklahoma in Norman, where he's a leading researcher there, holding positions as the George Lidd Cross Research Professorship, professor in the Department of Microbiology and Plant Biology. He's a director of the Center for Earth Observations and Modeling, associate director, Institute of Resilient Environmental and Energy Systems at the University of Oklahoma. So for all you aspiring researchers, this is a young student that has really matured into a really proficient and well revered or recognized researcher. Without further ado, I'll turn it over for Xiangming to give us a presentation on land cover and land use change, looking at data projects, driving factors, and impacts. Thank you, Xiangming.
So thank you, Dennis, for these wonderful introductions. And I also like to thank you, Wei Gao, for inviting me in here. I'd like to thank all the department and Lauren for all the help. And everybody said making my travel here is very nice and they enjoyed it. Yeah. It is kind of feeling. 30 years ago, 1994, I gave my oral defense for my dissertation, right? So 30 years later, I came here, give the second talk in here. So it's a kind of thrilled, but it's also exciting. And another point is talking in front of my advisor, committee members here, all the friends. Yeah. So you can see my different feelings. Yeah. I hope you appreciate it. I really appreciate this opportunity to come to the forecast here to talk about it. Yeah. So my talk today is going to talk about the land use, land cover change, and focus on data products and driving factor and this impact. And before I mention all the materials, I really like to say the material I presented today, a lot of it come from the collaboration over many, many years with the researcher who are my graduate student, postdoc, or collaborator. So many people are contributing to the intellectual, the process I in these 30 years. Yeah. And I also like to mention that the research activity is also supported by very diverse research programs, and including the NASA, also Natural Science Foundation, and Natural Institute of Health. Yeah. It reflects the very dynamic or complex system I have been involved over these 30 years. And you can see part of my research getting into very different areas. So in primary, my research over years are covered into 3 areas. First one is the land use land cover change. So we really want to see what the agricultural, forestry, urbanization occurred or have occurred over time at a global scale. And with that knowledge, we begin to look into the impact, to asking how the land use land cover change, in addition to climate change, how they affect the carbon, water, and the climate component. So that linked to a lot of collaboration with different people. Yeah, it's kind of interdisciplinary study. And the third component, I think Dennis also mentioned about it, is to take the land use land cover change, affect the animal health and human health. It's a concept called OneHealth concept. Yeah. So over the years, I have been working on all these 3 components. Yeah. So for today, I give a small sampling of the study I have been involved over years. And one sense is trying to talk to my advisor and the committee member on the front here, what my experience I have. And then the other one is talk with graduate students here to see how some interdisciplinary study are moving over time. Yeah. So I'm going to pick 3 kind of a case study to illustrate the process. So the tropical forest is, for the carbon cycle, the climate, it's all well recognized in importance. And tropical areas are also very, very dynamic. You have deforestation for agriculture, and livestock, also for mining, for urbanization. So these tropical areas, one of the area has very rapid changes. So it's very important for all kind of assistant components. So in the scientific community, there's also a lot of long-term attention to try to monitor where the deforestation occurred. So this slide is giving you all the way back to 1980s, the time done by some colleague, David Scott and Jim Tucker over there. They are using the satellite data. They have like a couple hundred students working for a few years and look at all the satellite image. They use the pen to draw where the forest or non-forest, and use that technology trying to quantify how Amazonia deforestation occurred. Yeah. So it's a long process. So within that kind of work, we begin to have understanding for Brazil, Amazonia, how the forests change over time and what kind of a driving factor are driving that dynamics. You can see there's agro-industrial expansions, there's a frontier governance, and also territorial performance over there. So all kinds of factors are driving there. There's also a number of data products in those regions to try to identify the deforestation and reforestation or afforestation dynamic in the regions. There's a number of data products are available for the scientific community to support policy or impact analysis, and also the management research. And my research group began to look into these regional and global data sets and trying to ask a number of questions, see how these data sets are developed. So the first question we've been asking ourselves is to what degree these different data sets agree with each other. And if they don't, what kind of impact they can have for the conservation management and the policy, all these formulations. So this graphic, I really show you there's quite a bit of divergence among the different data sets. Yeah. Our second question is, if there's a moderator or larger discrepancy among data sets, what are the factors are driving those differences, right? And identify those factors, then we can figure out what can we do to improve the data sets for a forest map in that way. So from remote sensing land cover land use point perspective, you can say any land cover type depends on a number of factors we can do it. So first, the most important one, the definition, right? When we talk of forest, what's the forest definition? So everybody has different definition, you maybe have different results. So definition is very important. And they also come into what kind of mapping algorithm you have. And everybody maybe use different algorithm, they can produce different data map. Then you can also have the issue with the image data, what kind of satellite data you come in. It's optical data, or it is microwave data, all that stuff. All these different data sets, they all have an impact on the forest map. And there's another factor is a kind of training data sets and the validation data sets, where you get the data, they're all important to deal with, have an impact for the forest cover map. Yeah. So there's a variety of factors for constellations. And the third question our group is trying to work on is like, how can we develop a new and improve the forest data cover? And the way we did some analysis, highlight our approach, say, for example, for forest definition, we began to start using the FAO United Nations definition. And help out that definition is used for global forest resource assessment. So that definition allowed to compare all the forests across the globe. So we have chosen this FAO forest definition as a starting point. Then we also improve our algorithm, take advantage of a time series data analysis. Yeah. And many years ago, the time series data is not available because it's very costly, very expensive. At the time, I took my first course in here, remote sensing. That time, one satellite image cost you $3,000. So back to 2000, early 2000, it still cost $800 the image. So it's very hard to, you have to be very careful to choose that, spend that $800 or $3,000. So that one, but since 2008, there's all this satellite image become freely available to the public. So it's become free. So now how you can take advantage of the time series data for remote sensing and improve your forest or grassland or land cover type. Yeah. There are also issues how you can combine different data sets for different type of sensors. You can have optical sensors that interest reflective of vegetation canopy that interact with the light and the canopy. You can also use the microwave sensors that interact with the tree trunk branches. Right? So our forest definition have both tree trunk branches, also have a leaf canopy. Right? So by combining those two data sets, you are able to better characterization of the forest. Yeah. So you can also have better way to deal with the training data that coming into, can we engage citizen science? Nowadays, we have a smart cell phone. The smart cell phone, people can take photos. All the photo has a GPS, right? The GPS location, the landscape, that information you can use in crowdsourcing technology. You can use a machine learning methods to identify the individual photo, take that photo into a landcard type. So that you can have mass numbers of validation or training data sets. So that really, for us, is trying to combine all this technology advance over the years and see how we can do it. So let's give you one example of two satellite sensors. One is the optical sensors here. That's also the MODIS. It's telling you the vegetation health canopy, how much leaf area they have in the space. And the other one is the L-band microwave data. They tell you how much tree trunk branch and biomass it could be. You can see these two graphics have very different property, right? And the number here are very nicely show you where the forest come up. Yeah. So by combining these two data sets, we're able to produce a forest map, a forest and non-forest map. In that way, we can see based on biological definition of tree, branch, and trunks, and based on the definition of canopy altogether, and produce this improved forest map. Something you can do, this kind of technology, you can always combine pulsar data with Landsat or other Sentinel-2 ORS data. So by the end, you can see this is the FAO based on the country reported globally how much forest they have. And this is the data from combination of microwave data and this optical data. So now you can see much consistency between FAO statistical data. Those are take 104 people from the Department of Forestry. They have very high level repeated sampling, and you can also see because satellite data, by including microwave data, you're getting closer to these two data sets. But the benefits of this is FAO is every 5-year data. You do every 5-year inventory. By having satellite data available here, we're able to do every year. Then we are able to do every season. So we can ask the question, what's the interannual variability of deforestation or afforestation or reforestation? And what's the in-season forest dynamic? Yeah, it's really open the window for forest research. So by the time we got all this annual forest map, the next question we begin to ask ourselves, what's this annual forest loss or gain in that one? Because in the past, we can only do 5-year gain or 5-year loss. Now we can do annually. By the time to go from 5-year to annually, then link it to the policy has a much stronger implication. You can assess the question like when the policy is implemented and how long did they take effect. So in that way, these data sets have become useful. So this you can see we begin to able to quantify the forest dynamic over this time. We can also begin to ask the question with the change of Brazilian government, the president change. I mean, when they have one president has set a policy, the other president have new policy, what the impact of forest dynamics. This is all reflected by this annual forest dynamic component. Yeah. So this is going to give you one example, see how important this annual mapping are going to be. This is one example, is you can see the forest canopy vegetation change index here. When you have a drop in here, you have annual data, you can develop this kind of dynamic at a pixel scale. Right, so that's a very, very important one for localized forest policy and conservation research. And then you can also look into the question about the forest gain. You see on this in the annual changes. They can say where the deforestation, where the new active secondary forest recovery or reforestation happens based on this vegetation dynamics. So in the end, we put all this together, and then we can produce this forest map for the Amazonia from like to 7. This we show you here is like a 4 years dynamic component. Yeah. And that way we also start to compare our data sets with national government data sets. One of the data sets is a Brazilian government. They produce these data sets as a national report, so we can compare the difference between the different data sets. So we find out like where the forest increased there, where the forest lost, increased again after that time. We also began to tackle this issue of on this El Nino and dry year, how that affected the forest area dynamic. So that part of work is all talking about the data, how we produce the data. And I want to show you some results to looking into the driving factors on the forest dynamic in the same locations. In Brazil, there's a lot of activity trying to set up a protected area. So there's a national protected area. There's also state government protected area. So you have a different type of protected area because the governance is different. Then you also have a difference of objective for protected area. Some protected area are for very restricted protections, and some protected area still have people over there. So there's a term called sustainable use, right? So how this question different governance of protections and how this management objective is strict protections or sustainable use, how those affect the forest area dynamics. So for doing that question, so we began to to analyze the area of forest in Amazonia. We also look at this called indigenous territory. Then we can also look for the forest area within those territories, right? And use those information to assess the effectiveness of protection with different governance, different objective management on the forest dynamic. Yeah. So the results, I think one of the results can show very, very clearly here, where you have a different with national versus state level of protection area. They have some difference. When you have a different objective, there's strict protections and sustainable use. They also have some difference. Yeah. So you can begin to, on the broader scale, to ask those questions for entire Amazonia. And that's very important for the policy-wise is where the money should go for new investment for international community. So they should, which reserve they should be put in, right? Which one is the more effective. So by analyzing all the natural reserve, then we can start to provide some data to help the government and the policy folks and the international aid agency to deal with these kind of questions. Yeah. And the other part we talk about is the impact. So we know we have a forest dynamic. What's the impact we have? So one example I will show you here is the impact for carbon cycle component. On the carbon cycle component, on the tropical forest, there's a set of questions. Is we have deforestation affect the carbon cycle. We also have a forest degradation affect the carbon storage, carbon cycles. How you can separate these two, or find a way to identify the relative role of deforestation and forest degradation for that work. So that requires two sets of data sets. One data set is very good annual forest map data. The other data set is the biomass data, right? So for the biomass data, we've been working on a number of data sets. One of the data sets is based on, it's a microwave data. It's a vegetation kind of optical depths, kind of this concept. This data set is a microwave data set that allow us to identify, measure the biomass across the global, particularly on forest area. So this is a number of data, show you what the data sets will look for the tropical Amazonia area and Congo Basin and Southeast the Asia regions. So by put these two data together, now we begin to figure out this and the effectiveness of this forest gain and loss. This will give you a simple example here. This is the timing over years. This is one grid cell have a deforestation, and the other one has a forest gain. Right? So that give us indicate these biomass data are sensitive to this deforestation and forest gain in the process. That's for one grid cell, but we have thousands of grid cells to do this analysis. So in that way, we really needed to know very detailed individual grid cell, the forest, non-forest dynamic. Yeah. So that's what I mentioned, the importance of a forest map, or the importance of annual forest map. I got into that. So that's this analysis where you do multiple grid cell with deforestation and the multiple grid cell with a different level of forest gain. That process show that how biomass are changing and how that spatially are changing. So in the end, we became able to address this question in Amazonia. Brazilian Amazonia, is the deforestation has more impact than the forest degradation, right? So the end result that come up is the forest degradation has a stronger impact on the biomass loss than the deforestation. Yeah. So just remember, a lot of our discussion in the past, we always talk about deforestation, how deforestation affects the biomass. But by looking at this analysis, we capture out the forest degradation is also very, very important. Yeah. So in that way, the implication for the policy and the forest management coming is, can we do some way, spend more resource, additional resource, at least additional resource for deforestation issues to prevent the forest degradation, right? So that require maybe less input, but maybe more effective. So this is a paper, a couple of those papers in the last couple of years, we began to able to tell that a story that can help impact for the forest management and the conservation. Yeah. So that's a part of my first story. Is how we go from data, the driving factor, to the impact. I think there's many things that we are ongoing now in terms of the temperature, the hydrology, the component is all under study. I want to tell us the second story, just some time, is bring back to the place I've been in Oklahoma. Yeah, so it's close to home, and it's also personal experience. I just mentioned I spent many years in New Hampshire. It's all forest state, right? When I got my job in Oklahoma, my interview, my younger daughter flies with me to the campus interview on the airport and say, "Where's the tree?" Yeah, it's all grassland. Where's the tree stuff? Yeah, so I think that he asked me, "Can you find how many trees you have in Oklahoma?" So that's the question I have with a 10 years older daughter. So with that kind of a personal motivation, I began to look at the forest in Oklahoma. So Oklahoma has a very interesting one. We do have very diverse climate gradient. The eastern side, we have very high rainfall, we go 1,000 millimeters. On the western side, you only got 200 millimeters, very large ranges, right? You do have some forest. That's one thing to know. The other thing that's very interesting to know is the grassland, you can have more and more trees. Yeah. So this is something, you can see the grassland here, you have an individual tree, like a bunch of trees become like a savanna landscape, right? Then you have this forest kind of style, dense. Yeah. So that becomes very interesting to me. So in the effort to count how many trees in Oklahoma. So, but it's very hard to us to do it at that time. So we began to see, can we develop this problem, divide it? Let's do this part of component first, so to identify where's the forest. This is a big problem in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas. Even further down to Arizona, we call it woody plant encroachment into the grassland. And it has two major factors. One, the rancher lost the land for grazing, is the one. They have less land for livestock grazing. And second one is you have accumulated a lot of those trees that use a lot of water. So then you have very reduce the runoff in the state. So then you have these lakes become issues. The streams, the lakes become no water. So that's a big issue. And also is a lot of biomass when it gets drier, they get biomass burning. The wildfire is popular. And they also have a problem with pollen. They have a lot of pollen. They extended the season of asthma and the allergy, right? So you can see a simple vegetation encroachment change all this carbon, water, climate, and the health. Yeah. So Oklahoma State has a state of registrations nowadays, trying to figure out how to by putting law and how to deal with these issues. Yeah. So we've been, before they have this law, the past few years, we've been trying to develop an approach from remote sensing point of view, from land use point of view, to identify all these problems. So this is a woody plant encroachment in Oklahoma. So it's a set of research question we've been working on. We're trying to say what's the current status. So this one question is say, what's the what is eastern red-seated forest in Oklahoma at a given years? And the second question is how this changes over decades. And third one is how many years you take for grassland to become a forest, right? To answer those questions, we need to figure out how to develop this annual map so we can track this dynamic over years. So this is the one work done by our students start tackle this, take all this work on that. And this the approach we take is similar to Amazonia study. And we combine the optical data here with microwave data, take advantage of tree trunk identified by the microwave data, take advantage of optical image related to vegetation canopy, and put all the two together, a very nice definition for a proper definition for forest. Now we can have very consistently in the forest map. So you can, this is our data for 2010, about 40,000 square kilometers. This is the Oklahoma Forest Survey, estimated these numbers. Yeah. So that will give you very nice data sets, and we have confidence in the validation working with the Oklahoma Forest Service, and to do all this validation, see what we can do. So with that knowledge, now we begin to go back history, right? Over the history-wise, how this will change over 30 years. In that way, we can identify how this progress over change over time from 1980s all the way to like 2005 to 2010 in that paper. And right now we are working on up to like 2020 or 22, that time zone. Yeah. So that also gives you some kind of a process over time, how they increase. So then you can also come up with a question later on what kind of impact happens. So we do that kind of work for small area. We also do this kind of work for entire states. Yeah? So you can start to see across entire states and how they change over 30 years. And nowadays our state is being called wood encroachment as infestation. So they want control, right? It sounds very good, but there's a biological process. Is it really doable? If you eradicate it, you remove it, are they come back or not? And how many years will it come back? So all this historical research I began to provide data for the community to discuss this. So otherwise we may be very blindly say we want to do something, or maybe Mother Nature or biological process will not as effective as you wanted. So we are beginning to provide data for entire state government for that kind of a discussion. Okay, the final case, I want to do another case study. I choose this one, so many of you go to supermarket, right? You buy eggs. Yeah, you see your eggs price are very, very high, right? Now you got into $6 a carton of eggs, all that stuff. Well, there's all kinds of reason why this eggs price get higher. And one case is you have, we all know there's some avian influenza occurred in these United States. And the first case back to the US is back to the 2015, 16, whatever that time. But still, millions of chicken were killed. Right? And this year, we have more, a lot more. It also occur not only in poultry, but also in wild birds, right? But this is not, it's a US case, but if we go back further by history. So the major events also occurs in 2003, that time. So that was a very big event happened in Asia. All these countries in Asia has this problem. The way they can do is they have to bury kill all the chicken, birds, and then store that way. Yeah, you can also see there's quite a big impact for the people travel back to 2000, early 2000 time. So that reminds you of some information we have right now with the COVID-19. Right? We have mask, all this, yeah. And nowadays, there's a few human cases also occur in different countries. So there's a concern, global concern, is that where is the next pandemic? So among the research community, quite a bit of people are talking about it. It is avian influenza could be one of the candidates for that. Yeah. I think this kind of work, the USDA, USGS are doing great work trying to monitor the US conditions. So I was very lucky at that time. So you can say lucky or unlucky, right? I can tell you because I work on the land use, land cover change. At that time, I do agriculture mapping for rice agriculture for food security. Our question is what's food security in Asia? It's 90% of the rice produced in Asia, so everybody needs it for food. There's also greenhouse gas or methane emission for rice paddy. So I was doing busy with that kind of work. And all of a sudden, I get a call from FAO and say, can you come into the role to talk about this? Because they find out by the disease surveillance, by outbreak case, they see there's a lot of domestic duck involved. There's a lot of domestic chicken involved. And the question coming into is, where are the ducks? Where are the ducks in Asia? That's a simple question, right? So, but in reality, is in Asia agriculture history, the duck and rice paddy are integrated production systems. You use the duck as when the rice is transplanted, they put duck into the rice fields. The duck eat all the mosquito larvae, the good food for ducks. So it's a very nice system. It's very well integrated, and the duck, after the rice harvest, the duck go to the post-harvest rice fields. The duck quality, egg quality is much better. It's more nutritious. So it's a century long rice duck system in there. But unfortunately, we have avian influenza coming in from the wild birds or integrated network. So for that way, we began to look at this issue from this One Health concept. There's human health and animal health. In this case, animal health is wild birds and domestic animals, what their health, and what facts their health, and the environment health. So this is a simple graph here is this one simple case to illustrate how we need to approach this problem from the One Health. You can see from here, you can see human health, human flu, and poultry, and the pork, they all have the flu. Swine, seasonal flu, all this avian influenza. Then you also have weather and climate, you have migratory birds, they are carrying low pathogenic virus, and you have this poultry, and both poultry, also domestic and wild birds, they have become highly pathogenic. That's the highly pathogenic virus that caused us a problem because the hospitals were dead for all this. But they all have the habitat. They need a stage where they play, they interplay together. So what's their habitat? That was the rice field, the fish pond, natural wetland, and surface water body. So by doing that, my research was dragged into this framework. So in early 2000, it's supported by National Institute of Health all these years and National Institute of Science Foundation to look into these issues. Yeah. I can show you a couple of slides, not complete results, just give you what kind of fun activity can happen. So, yeah, we did some field work in one of the Lake Poyang Lake in China, and you can see there's a lot of wetland in this deep green color. Then you have a lot of agricultural systems. Then you have ducks here. Right after harvesting, they also integrated system there. Yeah. Then you also have poultry production around these roads. Yeah. Millions of ducks and well-integrated systems. And for doing that, well, we have to collect the data. One way to collect data is how we know the domestic poultry moving around, right? Yeah, so what do? We put a GPS data log on the ducks and let them move around it, right? So the most difficult part of the student is you put one GPS in one ducks. Here is 5,000 ducks. So 1 week later, you want to retrieve that data log. You need to go through that 5,000 ducks to find out which one it is. Yeah, still when you put some paint color, but it doesn't work because every time you paint different color for that duck, they will kill it. Because they think all the ducks did not belong to that flock. So they will move it out. Yeah, so this is the domestic data set that tell you how the data is collected over space and time. This is the wetland on the left side. This is the domestic, this is paddy rice. Tell you how they spend the time between wetland and and rice agricultural systems. And we're also doing some fun work for GPS data log for the wild birds. There's a lot of work from the USGS group. Dan Porso and John Taikawa, or that group, they are involved in these activities. Yeah. So by look at all that data together, just show you one example. It's very visually, very simple one, very nice, very intuitive one. On the right-hand side, it's all this circle of the location of outbreak case. Right? You can see where the outbreak here in this one. On the left-hand side, you can see where all this we call double cropping 2 or 3 here, and here, and here. This disease outbreak are related to poultry production system. And poultry production system related to the wetland we produce. So that will be tied very well together. Yeah. So by doing all this stuff, now we began to put it into the computer modeling and do this kind of risk assessment and tell where the high risk regions, right? And by having this risk map, we're able to work with national CDC and animal health institution and trying to develop a plan for surveillance. The question they ask is, where should I go sample? You always need to be high risk region. That's the answer. But where the high risk region, that depends on the modeling we put it together. Yeah. So this go back just like the US side, just give you one example. Here's the wild birds, where we have avian influenza now, and this is the poultry, where they're affected. Yeah. So our next future work is really trying to look into North America, see where the situation could happen, because it's no longer an Asia issue. It's from Asia, Africa to Europe. Now finally move to North America and South America. By the early 2000s, we know it's going to happen in North America, but we don't know when. So now is the time it happens. The question becomes is, what the land cover or vegetation change in the northern hemisphere, particularly high latitude, how those affect the migration of the birds, and how their poultry systems are changing over time. Yeah. So this is the question we're going to try to need to be investigated. Yeah. So in the very end, I just one summary slides and just trying to give more courage into our younger graduate students here, like my age 30 years ago, right? You are at the golden time. You have data, right? A lot of data available for satellite community. And this second one is a very important one. There's a lot of computer resource. Is there? Actually, it's freely available for you. Yeah. There's a Google Earth Engine communities are all available. There's quite a number of data algorithms available. And so it is for our younger students and researchers also, it's a really great time to study the land use land cover change and take that data into your study for driving factor and for impact study. Yeah. So now is how you can look, one student can do all this together as a part of your thesis or dissertation. It's unthinkable to this on 30 years ago. Yeah, I think now time you can ask this kind of question globally everywhere. Yeah. Great, thank you.
This is I think a really great example of looking at complex problems, but then addressing them with very simple questions, and be able to sort of break that complex problem down into researchable parts, and also have a big team of graduate students to work with.
Yeah.
So, but we have about 10 minutes for questions. Any questions for Xiangming?
Yeah, sure.
Xiangming, that was a great seminar. I have a question back to your Amazonian example, you talked about clear cutting or deforestation versus degradation, but I'm not sure what degradation meant. Is that selective cutting?
Selective cut is a part of that,
Yeah.
and also small small wildfire. You have not destroyed entire landscape yet. You still category is still called forest, but it's not. But this
It's not intact.
is intact as the one. Yeah.
Thank you.
One question there.
Just follow up on that. So could you then, like, I'm still trying to understand how the carbon loss was higher from the degradation versus the deforestation. Is that because of when they deforested, they planted with crops, that was still sequestering carbon, or why greater loss from degradation versus deforestation?
Yeah. If you want to estimate the deforestation, the loss of the carbon, you need to have one variable is how much area was deforested. Right? So that after you have identified that the area of the deforested, then you know the loss of the biomass in those greater cell pixels. Right? It's one variable. And the other variable, you have some area that's still forest, but it is affected by the degradation, the process. Then we can separate two categories, right? So by separating it, now you can calculate the forest biomass change in those gray cells were not deforested, or the loss that happened. The two values are compared to each other. Now we come up with a number, say the biomass loss from the degraded forest area is higher than from the deforested area.
Let me check with the Zoom participants if there's any questions there.
No questions from the Zoom yet.
Then Gabriel, and then the next.
I mean, really great talk, thank you. Got a couple of questions, maybe more, but I'll just stick first to the hydrology part, go back to Oklahoma. I used to be a postdoc in Oklahoma, so
Wow,
I know
wonderful.
what you mean by grassland, so I know.
Yeah.
So the woody biomass conversion from grassland, and first question is, has any of your group or somebody looked at the impact in hydrology? Because you also mentioned how it's turning into grassland and runoff.
Yeah.
Has anybody looked at whether evapotranspiration or the runoff has changed? If it hasn't, I would be very happy to look at it. Other question is, would you be able to share the data? The conversion data, is that available freely? Would you be sharing? That's the first question I have. Maybe stop there.
Yeah, we have a collaborator. Two ways to do this. Look at this. The impact on hydrology. One way is from a modeling perspective. So we do have a collaborator, Chris Zhou from Oklahoma State University. So he's running this SWOT model with different level of woody, non-woody component to see how the runoff change. What kind of after ET is calculated. So they're focused on runoff component. And the other part for my research group is we developed this satellite-based modeling. So we estimate transpiration between the grass and non-grass. So there's the students right now is doing this kind of the model is there, we want to run in there. Now we are at a validation process, and we use the data from Scott in Arizona. They have very nice mosquito assistance. Yeah, have grassland and mosquito, different proportion of mosquitoes and the forest. There's 3 sites over there, and we are testing that right now. I see the paper is almost ready to submit it.
So I'll wait for your results.
Yeah.
To work on it.
So that's great.
I wonder, USGS has been monitoring the runoff, and would it even show in the data?
Yeah. So definitely the biomass data the woody codes that we can share. Yeah. It's available. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Question again?
I was just going to say for the degradation aspect, so there's another group at Boston University, on Curtis Woodcock, and I think we found something really similar, that degradation was really widespread. You're using long-tap pine trees.
Yeah.
So you're using pulsar and modes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it seems like there's a lot of potential here, and you found pretty much the same conclusion by two different approaches. Was there any like future developments? Now the degradation better ways to track it?
Yeah, I think both groups are coming very nice to come to similar conclusion. It's also you also have a Davis score for Michigan State. So also use the LULCC data to quantify the area of degraded forest versus non-deforested area. So there's several groups right now really tackle these questions. Yeah. It's very nice to see we have different approach, but it's come in broad brush. The conclusions are pretty similar. So that's a useful information to have for the future, right? So what kind of data can be improved? Second, there is the Boston research group are all using this mostly with the LULCC, the optical data, right? And our research group is combine this LULCC with pulse microwave data. So, and also this European Space Agency has this Sentinel-1 microwave data. Yeah. So all these microwave data are very powerful for tropical region because of too many clouds. And the LULCC data has these issues. And you maybe have no data for entire year for lots of places. So we really require this microwave data to do it. And it's very nice to know the scientific community have more and more microwave data become available.
Any other questions? I have one, I guess, related to the Oklahoma tree encroachment, woody encroachment. It seems that some of the natural ways of keeping trees and woody systems out is, in the past, has been grazing and fire.
Yeah.
And I believe that the fire suppression has been pretty high in Oklahoma and in many grasslands. So as you look at strategies post-eradication, then how do you incorporate, natural dynamics of fire management, grazing management are you looking at that as a way of maintaining eradication of these species?
It's a very tough question. I think, yeah. In Oklahoma right now, we call it a wicked problem, right? You don't have so wicked problem, hard definition, but you have some idea, but you don't know how to solve it. I think this woody encroachment we treat it right now as a wicked problem. As a part of our NSF project, so we do have this EBSCO funding the Tracker 1 project. So this woody encroachment as one of a wicked problem we trying to tackle it. So within that project, we have like a social science team. We do a lot of survey to try to understand the human behavior and the attitude for these kind of issues. And you also have the economists to try to figure out what's the cost for the rancher, right? What's the benefits. For our biology side, we want to see what's the historical events and what's the probability if you burn it or you remove it, what's the probability to come back? How many years to come back? There's a natural process in there. So it's the project. It is on the third year of our project. Actually, we just had a meeting, 2 days meeting yesterday, and that's good. I think this is the problem. It happens not just Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas. Look at Arizona or New Mexico. All this south area, dry land, right? It also happened into Africa too. And in the U.S., the storyline is the number of cattle is not changing much, and the beef cattle production actually increased, right? And that means the individual cattle body size is getting bigger. So where they get food, feedstock. They're using corn or other stuff, right? So they really reduce the use of the grassland, the grassland. They used to nobody use it or less used it. So all this management all come up. And when you have all tornadoes, my hypothesis is you have this weather change pattern. These high rainfall intensity are changing, right? You get large rainfall events happen a lot more. So they promoted this tree and grass competition. That changed that tree grass competition. So I talked this lunch with Randy. I said one day I want to talk with him about the savanna model. Back to Michael at time. So how you deal with tree grass competition on the change of the climate. Now these are particularly heavy rainfall events, and really disproportionately promote the tree versus the grass. So not just the drought issue, it's the larger rainfall events combined all together, right? Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Xiangming again for providing a lot of new information and this a lot of great presentation. So join me in thanking Xiangming.
Thank you. It's very nice to talk to everybody. So welcome to Oklahoma. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you want to come to Oklahoma, let me know. I'll be happy to be the host. Yeah.
Great.